This is Alan Stang. A federal grand jury indicts the Federal Reserve. Details in a minute. Please stick around. In recent months, your reporter has brought you news of the fact that state legislatures across the country are beginning to demand officially that the Federal Reserve System be abolished. Now comes even more electrifying news. A couple of months ago, in Salt Lake City, a federal grand jury indicted the Federal Reserve Bank. Indeed, in a recent issue of the Review of the News, Associate Editor Elise Clark writes that the grand jury indicted the Federal Reserve twice. The powers that be have good reason to worry. U.S. Attorney Brent Ward kept the document secret for a couple of days, said it was illegally prepared, and refused to sign it. U.S. District Judge David Winder called the indictments, quote, rinky-dink, end quote. But the grand jury refused to fold. It rewrote the dismissed criminal indictment and submitted it as a petition for a civil lawsuit against the Fed. At the same time, Salt Lake City Attorney Gary James Joslin announced that, quote, the sanctity of the grand jury system under common law is at stake, end quote. Joslin filed a petition with the court on behalf of the grand jury, charging that Judge Winder and U.S. Attorney Ward, quote, were designedly thwarting, obstructing, and otherwise refusing to assist the grand jury in this investigation, end quote. The grand jury's civil suit contains 4 counts. Here is count 1, quote, by issuing and circulating irredeemable paper as legal tender in payment of debts, the Federal Reserve Bank in this district, in concert with other Federal Reserve Banks, under authority of a prior Congress, is compelling the states to violate that provision of the Constitution which forbids them to make anything but gold and silver coin a tender in payment of debts, end quote. Of course, this is nothing new. Regular listeners to these broadcasts know that the government breaks the law every day. In fact, it is fair to say that the government is the biggest outlaw in the country. Here is count 2 of the grand jury's indictment that became a lawsuit, quote, by issuing and circulating irredeemable paper as legal tender in payment of debts, the Federal Reserve Bank in this district, in concert with other Federal Reserve Banks, is causing the states to violate that provision of the Constitution which forbids them to impair the obligations of contract, end quote. Count 3 accuses the Fed of using as legal tender, quote, something other than what the Constitution allows, end quote. In many courts today, the Constitution is blatantly ignored. A federal judge is as close as we come to a king in this country. In some ways, a federal judge has more power than the president. Today, many of those judges regard the Constitution as an intrusion. Without exaggeration, they make the law up as they go along. Be with me tomorrow for more. This is Alan Stang. Think about it.
For transcripts of the Alan Stang reports, contact the program sponsor or send $1 to the John Birch Society Features, Belmont, Massachusetts 02178.